welcome everyone to our Product Makers community talk today by Productboard. So for those of you that haven't joined, my name is Adam Davis. I'm one of the directors of product here and also our community leader. And yeah, I'm stoked to have you all here today and to have this conversation with Janina. So yeah, we're really lucky to have you. Thanks for joining us today, Janina. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this little workshop talk, and I'm doing really great.
Brilliant. Awesome. All right. So for those that don't know, Janina is an independent product manager with tons of experience, over 10 years experience in building digital products and leading teams. And I've really enjoyed our conversations together as well. She's also featured on our podcast. If you haven't checked it out, and her episode's going to be dropping in a few weeks. So you'll be able to learn a lot more from her. She's been able to gain a ton of experience from various industries and e-commerce, retail, health tech, maritech, and consultancy, and with just a real focus on user-facing experiences as well. So really excited to jump into this session today. I think some of the key areas that she's really passionate about are establishing structure, building teams, and zooming out to see the bigger picture, which can actually be pretty challenging at times when you're really in the weeds of it all. And as one of the first product hires in startup, she's been really focusing on working alongside founders to find strategies and achieve product market fit, which we're all kind of constantly doing as well. So really excited to have you here, Janina, and I will hand over to her in a minute in terms of what topics she's going to be doing. But just so folks know the structure of it, we'll be spending about 40 to 50 minutes in the session. You can ask questions as we go through it, and Janina will provide a little bit more context on that as well in terms of how it's going to run, and then we will leave a little bit of time at the end. So we're in Zoom webinars today, so if you do have any specific comments or questions, you can drop them in the chat, or there'll be also the Q&A section as well. So with that, Janina, I'll hand over to you and you can run the show. Cheers.
Super. Time is up and I can see a lot of great answers. So I'm going to read out some of those answers. I think they're all great. A lot about research. So I'm just going to read the comment here. Asked to describe a specific situation that most annoys them and why it is important for them. So that's great. I also have a lot of around user interviews, asking open-ended questions, trying to understand the problem around it, is really something, a tactic how you can validate if it's an actual problem, right? If you're finding the right problem. So having those open-ended questions and having user interviews and sometimes also audience interviews helps you to find the right problem. Then I can also see there is, Porter's Force, 5 forces, SWOT analysis, market research. I think this is something that you can do upfront to decide, okay, if this is an attractive market, or if this is a relevant market, because sometimes you will find a problem and then realize, oops, but the market is like so tiny, so I cannot build a business out of it, right? If there's like only one, or let's say a handful of enterprise customers that would buy your solution, then you could argue, is this really a relevant market, right? So market size is important, and this is something you, of course, can find out by doing market research and doing some SWOT analysis. So that's great. Then there's also something about, talk to those who previously failed with a similar product. So I haven't done this myself, but I think this is a really, really good, tactic to also understand, okay, what are their learnings? So that's great, because then you don't have to start from scratch. And I also talk to users again, talk to business owners, ask about biggest pain points, get a proof of concept and MVP in front of users quickly, identify users and decision makers, set up, experiment. So this is, talking about an MVP or proof of concept. First version is basically something how you can validate if this is the right solution. You can even do a step before and validate some prototypes, let's say Figma prototypes, in user interviews, in audience interviews, and see, okay, is this actually solving the problem for them, and is it good enough? Also, something I did recently was to do a commercial validation. So we created a pitch deck around the solution and the ideas we had, and tried to sell it actually, and then to see, okay, are users or are customer willing to pay for this? Is this really solving what they're looking for? Because when you are asking the question, yeah, do you want to pay for this? Then you will understand, okay, is this a good enough solution? Is this actually a problem? So I can highly recommend to also look into trying to sell the product as early as possible. Great questions. All right, good. So I think I've covered most of it here. Thank you so much for the good participation. It's great. Now I would like to go towards the next. Yeah. Okay, so time is up. I'm going to pick a few challenges, and yeah, just sharing my thoughts on those. But I can see there's something around users. Who are the users? Define roles and personas, having no data, having no customers or users. And I think this is really interesting, right? Because how do you get your data? How do you get confidence in your idea is valuable enough and what you're building makes sense? So how I would approach this is like the problem, like classic problem, pre-product market fit, startup very early, no users, no customers, basically having or running audience interviews and paying the audience, right? It requires budget. And that is also something that is always like tight, but I think it's budget well spent to pay audience that are in your assumed target group and get those feedbacks in, right? Because otherwise there's no chance on how to validate your assumptions and hypotheses early on, right? You end up by like building something, releasing something, and then start to learn. So you want to ideally, yeah, raise the confidence bar earlier. So this is why I highly recommend to work with incentives and run some audience interviews like very early on if you don't have any users. Then finding the right problem. Yeah, classic finding the right problem. This could also be something that sometimes you are in a situation where you want to invent something and you have maybe a really good market area, but you're not really finding the right problem, right? And then you're just shooting in the dark and trying to find the right problem. So, well, that's not great. Not great to be in this case. Running endless discovery, so knowing when to stop can be super hard. For me, it's always, why do I run discovery, right? Because I want to become more confident in my assumptions. I want to validate my assumptions and knowing, okay, I found good enough evidence, so let's build something, right? So one of my assumptions was right. So, okay, let's work with that. So raising this confidence bar until a certain point and then just start building. And this is where you would ideally stop, right? Otherwise you will end up in this endless discovery and you're keeping on discovering and going on, but never build anything. So that's that can be a trap. Let's say it this time. Having enough time for detailed research. Yes, you have the time limitation, so you need to be fast here. So for me, having enough time for discovery is also really fast. How I usually approach it is write down my assumptions, start building some prototypes. Engineering can also start building some first proof of concept that are really fast, and then get it out and validate and doing interviews on the side. So it's a really, really fast-paced environment. So to do research with audience interviews, but then also launching something and validating. So that's quite intense, but that's the main challenge. Then what else? I saw building on basis of assumption. Yeah, that's right. That's a great challenge, because again, you build everything based on assumption and you have to validate those. But again, I would say here applies the same. Maybe consider paying like your audience to do some interviews with you to minimize that risk. At least having founders locked into an idea without having done much product discovery. Yes, so I've been there as well. That's the challenge of working with founders. They can be so inspiring. They have a lot of great ideas, but sometimes they're just like, hold on to this idea and don't want to let go, even if they're proven wrong. That's tough. I can only recommend to just show the data, bring back the user feedback and show them, okay, this is what they said. Do you really want to stay with that idea? So that's quite challenging, and that goes back to your stakeholder management skills. It's quite tough to be in there. I've been there and it wasn't successful. Let's say it this way. Yeah. So what else to pick? I think there's like really good feedback here. Keeping low cost overheads to maximize the runway. Exactly. You don't want to spend all your time doing discovery. You also want to build something. Long hours. Oh yeah. Yeah. So technical depth, compromising on quality. Exactly. When you're building for speed, yeah, that's most likely to happen, that you're compromising on quality, right? But I think most of the startups, at least the ones I work for, they are willing to take the risk, because for them, it's always about, yeah, we have to validate the idea. And then when we get there, then we can clean up, right? And this is not, I agree, this is not the greatest way to work, and this is not how it should be, but that's often the reality, because they have to secure the next funding round. And for the next funding round, they need to reach some milestones. Great challenge. Yes. I love what you're writing here. Okay. Super. Okay, I think we got covered most of the topics. I'm also happy to answer questions that are popping up in the chat, by the way. I think what I would like to do next is, if you're still with me and if you're still up for it, just take a minute and write down what are your key takeaways from today on how to succeed as a 0 to 1 product manager, especially in product discovery. I would be so happy to have like a little summary over here. Can be one word. Okay, I'm going to read some out loud. A lot of us face the same challenges. Yeah, I agree. That's great to hear that that it resonates with you. Yeah, I also think that in this space, yeah, 0 to 1 product management, we can be there in different environments, right? As I said, it can be in a startup, can be in a corporate. So there are a lot of the challenges that are just repeating and coming back to us. So I agree. Make your own assumptions and validate or disprove with data. That's 100%. Yes, it's so important to just write down those assumptions and validate them. And also, I want you to, or I invite you to be very critical, because like often what happens with your own ideas is you want them to be right, and you're on the lookout for evidence that are proof, like that prove this idea or your assumptions. So really try to be aware of this bias and yeah, be open for the data and see, like, be open for the real feedback. So this is a way to validate your assumptions. Test assumptions ASAP, build an MVP ASAP. Juggle priorities is even more important before product market fit. Correct. So you cannot validate everything at once in one user interview or in one audience interview. So it's really important that you define, these are the critical assumptions, these are our big bets, we believe this, and I can validate 1 or 2 in my audience interviews or in my user test. So that's important, that you have a prioritized list, and then you work from there, and then you go back and you find new priorities. So it's really iteration. Finding the right problem to solve. Yeah, have enough data to validate your product discovery. Know when to move to the next step. Exactly. Fail early, iterate fast. Exactly. So move on, keep up the speed. And then I can also tell you something. So right now I'm also doing a lot of product discovery. And in the beginning, we just got a lot of negative feedback. And I was like, oh no, this is not what we want to hear. But actually it is what we want to hear, because then we can learn from it, and then we can create new assumptions, new tests, and then you get there. And now we're at the level where we might have found a problem that or also a solution that our users willing to buy for. So that's great. So you really narrow down and you sharpen your view and you sharpen your ideas. So this is what it's all about.
We've got,
yeah.
sorry, Janina, we've got one question in the chat from Marina.
Go ahead.
And it was, do you have any suggestions on how much data we should use to consider an idea validated? What are your thoughts on that?
I had an interesting talk about this as well. So when I was in consultancy, the partner would say, so for me, one data point is enough, but for others, 3 data points are enough. So that's like a rule of thumb. So if you're having 3 audience interviews and 3 people are saying the same thing, then I would consider it validated. So then that's the level where I think, okay, this is something I can consider to be true for now. Getting around 3 data points is good. Right? So assuming you don't have any quantitative data, then 3 data points. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes. Okay, there are a lot of tools, frameworks to help guide PMs. That's true. Yeah, I know that Productboard also has a lot of good frameworks to use. Adam, was there something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, sorry, we've got a couple of questions coming through. So one of them was about, you said that you got a lot of feedback during product discovery phase. I would like to know, how do you choose which feedback to work on? Huh, that's an interesting one.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. So of course you have your assumptions, and there's also the level of when you're so early, you have a concept, almost like you have a concept around the problem, and how to choose which feedback to work on, right? So I would choose basically feedback that would fit into the concept to work on. Or if I could see a pattern, like let's say there's an assumption. So today we assumed, okay, users are doing this. And then there was a lot of feedback around, no, but we are actually doing this. And then a new problem arises. And if this is like what users are telling you, or the audience is telling you, then you might want to go into this direction. It's really hard to say like what to choose. And I know this is like a feeling, and often product sense comes in, and it's a gut feeling and say, okay, there might be this problem in this area and this is where to go. But it's a good idea to go back to your strategy and also talk to your founders and leaders about this. Okay, here's some new issues arising. Should we prioritize those, or should we just try and keep going towards this side, right? Very hard. Sorry, I don't have a really clear answer for it, because it really depends on the situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think like as PMs, we're kind of truth seekers. So I think unfortunately, if you've got, I don't know, a couple of data points coming through, generally the one, how I would approach it would be the one that you feel has more quality. You get a good score from. You might want to focus a little bit more on those, but yeah. We got another question here from Shannon, which is, what happens when your advisory network friends, customers are telling you your product solves their problem, but when it comes time to open their wallets, they disappear? That's a good one. Propensity to pay.
Yes, that's a good one. And here, what I said earlier is taking those commercial validation, like willingness to pay, quite early in the process. So you can basically try to sell prototypes. No one knows that this product doesn't exist, right? You can try to sell those, and then you can see, okay, are we actually creating some value? So this is how I would approach this, because the worst case, you're describing the worst case. You build something, you were quite confident that this is the right solution, and then people don't want to buy. This means that you actually haven't reached product market fit, in my point of view. So there's something off with the value proposition. So it's not relevant enough. It's not valuable enough to pay. Yeah.
We've got one more question here, which was, how relevant is analyzing competitors at this phase?
I think it is. I think it's good to know who are competitors, and also to know what they're doing, because it gives you an idea of, are we finding the right problem? Are we solving it in the right direction? It gives you also, again, a little bit confidence, like you're trying to navigate and you're trying to find something. So competitors are just giving you confidence and saying, okay, yeah, there's a problem. So I wouldn't go too deep into detail, because they might be addressing someone else, different target group. Their value proposition might be slightly different. But it gives you like a confidence in the problem area you're in. So it's good to just have them on the radar and get inspired.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
All right, Janina, I think that's all the questions we have now. Any other kind of final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I have a final slide. I just want to say, if people want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn, but you can also find me in the Product Makers community on Slack. And I'm super happy for today and for participation. So thanks a lot. Yeah, you really made this happen.
No, thank
Well,
you.
how about pricing? I can see how about pricing, on what basis it should be increased, or product price, competitor, or what else? Yeah, pricing strategy is a different topic. There's so many strategies on how you can set a pricing. Of course, there's the strategy to build a profitable business. This is how you would set your pricing, just to make it profitable. But then also there's the strategy of like looking at competitors and saying, okay, we want to position us here compared to this competitor. We want to be lower because we want to win the market, or we want to be premium. There's a lot. So I think that's a different talk.
Awesome, love it. Well, thank you so much, Janina, for joining us today. Love the interactive workshop, and I think folks got a ton of value out of it as well. And yeah, I want to share up here if you want to quickly connect with Janina on LinkedIn. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.